Hjertelig velkommen til seminar med den halvkontinentale titelen Hands on eller Hands off. Egentlig skulle jeg nå begynne med å takke Jan Erik Vold for å gi oss inspirasjon og glede, særlig vi som vokst opp med han på 60- og 70-tallet. Men Jan Erik Vold har antagelig ikke stått opp enda. Så han ikke her. Så vi får klare oss uten han. Men hvis han kommer snikende, så kanskje vi kan få noen fine dikt av han da. Så jeg får bare ønske dere på vegne av servicekontoret 3 fine dager med seminar. Jeg heter Peter Lehne og leder av servicekontoret. En svært kapabel komité har stått for fagprogrammet. Det Agnes Mort, Gro Camilla Riis, Elisabeth Bjelland og Ole Reidar Johansen. De 4 skal også fungere som møteledere underveis. Og først ut Elisabeth Bjelland. Og hun har jeg også hørt veldig flink til å lese dikt. Og kanskje hun drister seg til å lese et dikt av Jan Erik Vold da. Vær så god, Elisabeth.
Det var jo helt fantastisk å få lov til å deklamere Jan Erik Vold på et seminar med så mange deltagere. Men jeg må bare stå på en stol. Det nemlig sånn at jeg fra 60-tallet. Og på 70-tallet, da gikk jeg på gymnaset. Og da pleide vi å ha noen morsomme fester og nachspiel. Og en kamerat av broren min, han elsket å lese Jan Erik Vold. Stående på en stol midt på natta. Og da tar vi nå vondt i ryggen-diktet. Ingen stor poesi, men det noe galt på ferde, får jeg vondt i ryggen. Første gang jeg hadde vondt i ryggen, såpass at jeg ikke kunne sitte og jobbe, var etter en skutertur en sommer, nedover på kontinentet, sammen med en pike. Måtte gå til knadame den høsten, og få knadd det bort. Herlig følelse. Først varmelampen varm og fuktig over ryggen. Så sterke fingre som smører inn ryggen og knar. Tommeltotten ikke minst. Presser seg bak skulderbladene. Det høyre særlig, en grepa neve som klemmer til omkring nakke og hals. Myoser. Ai, ai, ai! 12 ganger gikk jeg der. Trygdekassen betalte det meste. Men, hver gang lettet som en fugl etterpå, og søvnig. Et stille hurra for alle knadamer. Litt vondt i ryggen har vel de fleste. Jeg forklarte mitt med all skuterkjøringen. Sitter anspent og med høyre hånd på gassen konstant belastet. Fightet siden et år for vår kjærlighet. Denne piken og jeg. Først andre gang hos massøse forrige høsten. Også etter mye skuterkjøring. Også etter damemas fant jeg ut det var egen trøbbel som gjorde at jeg fikk vondt i ryggen. Nå bruker jeg ryggen som barometer. Dermed pleier ryggen å bli bra av seg selv. Var bare det jeg ville si. Dette skrevet allerede, eller publisert i 1968. Så han hadde jo skjønt en del, vår fraværende Jan Erik Vold. Men nå skal jeg over til det jeg egentlig skulle gjøre, og det å ønske alle varmt velkommen til Oslo og nok et tverrfaglig seminar i regi av Manuellterapeutenes Servicekontor. Etter at Folkehelsa slapp rapporten Sykdomsbyrde i Norge 1990 til 2013 for 2 dager siden, så det liten grunn til å tro at manuellterapeuter, fysioterapeuter, kiropraktorer og fysikalskmedisinere blir arbeidsledige med det første. Denne rapporten den slår nemlig fast at korsryggsmerter og nakkesmerter det den viktigste årsak til helsetap og sykdomsbyrde i befolkningen. Dette har skjedd etter et dramatisk fall i hjerte-kar-dødelighet i de siste 25 årene. Jeg våger å spå at mine kompetente og engasjerte manuellterapikolleger og andre yrkesgrupper som representert her i dag, vil kunne være helt sentrale for å kunne oppnå samme dramatiske utvikling når det gjelder konsekvenser av rygg- og nakkesmerter de neste 25 årene. Og da spør jeg dere om dere tar utfordringen. Ja, litt nølende her. Men det hadde jo vært fantastisk. Tema for dette årets seminar det hands on eller hands off. Yrkestitlene til både manuellterapeuter og kiropraktorer tyder jo nettopp på at det å være hands on, det ligger veldig nært knyttet til identiteten vår. På en måte akkurat det samme som Jan Erik Volds knadame. Erfaringsmessig det å være hands on også noe pasientene i stor grad etterspør. Men vi vet at det å være for mye hands-on og gi for mye passiv behandling, det kan hindre tilfriskning og øke risikoen for kroniske smerter. Derfor det ofte god grunn også å ha fingrene av fatet, altså å være mer hands-off. Og de siste 20-30 årene så har utviklingen heldigvis gått i retning at vi ser pasienten i et biopsykososialt perspektiv, og at vi setter fokus på terapeut-pasient-kommunikasjon, på å ha en mer kognitiv tilnærming, og på pain education. I tillegg har vi manuellterapeuter fått primærkontaktrolle som gir økt ansvar for å differensialdiagnostisere og henvise til spesialist. Og disse oppgavene innebærer nødvendigvis at vi må være mer hands-off. Og til årets seminar så har vi innhentet et koppel av dyktige forelesere, forskere og klinikere på disse områdene. På den annen side så kan hands-on og berøring erfaringsmessig virke smertedempende, tillitsskapende og inngi trygghet. Men evidensgrunnlaget tynt, og ryktene sier at massasjefaget på vei ut av grunnutdanningene. Derfor har vi innhentet en verdensledende forsker på mulige fysiologiske effekter av berøring og nærhet. Vi i seminarkomiteen håper at dere vil få utbytte av foredragene og verktøy til å ta med dere til arbeidsdagen på mandag. I tillegg til det faglige programmet håper vi at dere vil benytte alle de sosiale arenaene til å knytte nye kontakter, dele gamle minner og ha noen heftige faglige diskusjoner. Men akkurat nå så vil vi at dere skal lene dere tilbake og nyte åpningsforedraget som skal holdes av doktor med og spesialist i allmennmedisin, Pål Gulbrandsen. Jeg håper det riktig, Pål, at du
Jeg har vært det, ja. Jeg spesialist I samfunnsmedisin nå.
Nettopp. Og Pål, han professor på UiO, og han jobber på Senter for helsetjenesteforskning på Akershus universitetssykehus, og han har vært min leder I 3 år. Pål, han en nestor på kommunikasjon mellom lege og pasient I Norge, og også internasjonalt. Og I dag så skal vi få høre Påls refleksjoner rundt den lange smerten. Vær så god, Pål. The stage is all yours.
Takk for det, Elisabeth. Hvem jeg til å stå her og snakke om smerte? Ikke har jeg forsket på smerte. Ikke har jeg vært anestesilege eller jobbet på smerteklinikk. Jeg har ikke engang hatt mye smerte. Tannlegen oppdager stadig ting og spør om ikke jeg har hatt vondt. Nei, jeg har ikke det. Skinnebeinet mitt røyk tvert av I slalombakken, og tærne pekte bakover da jeg sluttet å skli. Det var vondt nok til at jeg ikke kunne gå, men ikke særlig vondt. Akillesen røyk så det smalt. Det var vondt, men jeg innbilte meg at jeg kunne gå I 13 dager, før en kollega overtalte meg til å oppsøke ham. Når jeg ser fotball med stygge taklinger og leggbrudd på TV, kjenner jeg ingen smerte. Kona mi og den ene av sønnene mine kan ikke se noe slikt. De kjenner fysisk på egen kropp den smerten de observerer at andre har. Min kone husker smerte, som hun heldigvis ikke har hatt så mye av. Jeg har glemt alle mine smerter. En annen sønn som meg, blir egentlig bare nysgjerrig når han ser en fæl skade fra en krigszone. Hvor galt det egentlig? Hva har skjedd? Han og jeg kjenner ikke den andres smerte. Og jeg fastslår at smertespeilnevronene må være ulikt fordelt I verden fra første stund. Og likevel, en dag I 1992 kom en kvinne rundt 50 til mitt allmennlegekontor. Da vi vel hadde satt oss, og nærmest før jeg hadde rukket å spørre hva hun kom for, erklærte hun: «Jeg kommer til deg fordi jeg har hørt du så god på fibromyalgi.» Man kan velge å bli smigret av en slik innledning. Samtidig kan jo setningen skremme vann av noen og enhver. Hvordan kunne jeg havne I en slik situasjon? Om det handler dette innlegget, og hvordan det gikk med damen, det skal dere få høre senere. Den tyngste sorg og møda den som ingen ser, skrev Ivar Aasen. Den lange smerten ofte usynlig. Jo visst manifesterer den seg I mønstre erfarne klinikere kan gjenkjenne. En viss manglende ledighet I bevegelsene, en påpasselighet nærmest. Hos noen kanskje et lidende blikk, I alle fall hos legen. Men ikke alltid. Jeg har hatt pasienter med kroniske smerter med forbausende vitalitet, og til og med godt humør. I alle fall hos meg. 1970-tallets medisinstudium hadde ikke forberedt meg på disse forskjellene. I den grad jeg husker hva jeg lærte, handlet det mest om at noen mennesker tåler sin smerte godt, andre overdriver den, og derfor mantra, vær forsiktig med smertestillende. Folk kan bli avhengige. Det henger fortsatt I. Junior, han som har dårlige smertespeilnevroner akkurat som meg, han har aldri litt vondt. Ordet vondt kan han ikke uttale uten ordet veldig, eller ordene veldig, veldig foran. Selv ved den mest marginale ytre påvirkning. Og jeg naturligvis ikke rundhåndet med smertestillende. Studiemantraer glemmes ikke så lett. Når man har sterke smerter, så må man jo se ut som man har det. I alle fall I akuttfasen, der jeg har fått med meg at man ikke bør være sparsom med smertelindring. Først I det siste så har jeg tenkt at guttens styrke og svakhet at han har det I kjeften. Det andre har I mimikken, eller bare inne I musklene sine, eller i nervebanene, eller i sentralnervesystemet. Han har sitt uttrykk, og far forstår ham ikke. Eller vil ikke forstå, for å herde. Filosofen Arne Johan Vetlesen skriver om forskjellen på synlig og usynlig smerte. Når øksa treffer leggen, blir jeg skadet. Skaden har sin egen objektivitet. Den kan observeres av andre, og de med egnet kompetanse kan søke å lege den. Jeg formoder at smerten som utløses av øksehugget mot min legg, vil være akkurat den samme, og således arte seg på samme måte, og utløse samme reaksjon og behov for lindring hos en hvilken som helst annen person som utsettes for det samme. Skriver han videre, med tanke på fornemmelsen av fysisk smerte, så tror vi at vi er gjennomsiktige for hverandre, eminent forståelige for hverandre, på tvers av kulturer og historiske epoker. Etter å ha vist hvordan denne allmennmenneskelige kroppslige likhet mellom individer er selve den vitenskapelige forutsetning for behandlingsmessige tiltak, bringer han inn individet. Jeg fastholder at fysisk smerte, forstått som smerteutsatthet, har noe allmennmenneskelig ved seg, noe vi kan samles om vår opplevelse av. Men straks vi begynner å dvele ved hva slik smerte gjør med meg, især når den er særlig intens og langvarig, kommer det inn et sterkt individualiserende element. Jeg er utsatt for noe alle mennesker kan utsettes for, i prinsippet. Men det er min måte å takle denne tilstanden på det her kommer an på. Og den kan nettopp oppleves å skille meg radikalt fra alle andre. Eller, sagt med lyrikeren Inger Elisabeth Hansens ord, den som ikke er i stand til å ytre seg om sin egen nød, og som skrittvis ikke kan objektivere den for verden, må i sine savns rike forbli en sak for seg. Det er hit, kjære tilhørere, jeg vil rette oppmerksomheten. Det er her spørsmålet i foredragets titel, om den lange smerten er en blind flekk eller et sort hull for medisinen, kommer inn. La meg gi dere en illustrerende anekdote. Det var lunsj i vårt forskningsmiljø. Der befinner det seg en del nevrologer, gode og engasjerte kolleger med stor vilje til å hjelpe sine pasienter. Vi diskuterte kronisk smerte, og da er veien kort til å få legers frustrasjoner på bordet. Så her, og det var nok særlig pasienter med kroniske ryggsmerter som fikk gjennomgå. En annen pasient ble nevnt, en mann uten ytre skade, men med helt fortvilende kroniske smerter, som følge av de Guérin-Roussis syndrom. En følgetilstand etter thalamusskade, vanligvis vaskulært betinget. Nevrologen som brakte historien på bane sa engasjert, han hadde virkelig grunn til å ha vondt. Og det hadde han, fordi smerten var forstått. Den var objektivert i form av bilder av thalamus, støttet av vår kunnskap om nervesystemet, som forteller oss at uønsket aktivitet i dette området kan gi smertesensasjoner uten et fysisk perifert substrat i kroppen. Smerten er derfor fullt ut vitenskapelig forståelig. Symptomer passer i våre kroppsmodeller, modeller som forutsetter noe allment, og som er basert på innsikt i kroppens oppbygning og funksjoner. Nå er det vel ganske banalt i dag, i 2016, å peke på svakhetene ved den naturvitenskapelige objektivering i møte med den enkelte pasient. De fleste her i salen vil nok nikke gjenkjennende og godta at det er ikke alt vi ser som vi kan forstå med den kunnskapshorisonten vi har. Det vi ofte overser, imidlertid, er at objektiveringstradisjonen ikke bare gjør noe med det vi ser på, men også gjør noe med synet på oss selv. Vi er ikke superavanserte datamaskiner som uanstrengt observerer, vurderer og konkluderer med tallfestede sannsynligheter gang på gang på gang, uavhengig av antall observasjoner eller av innholdet i det enkelte møtet. Vi er påvirkelige her og nå, og vi er i endring over tid. Hør bare. Jeg ble invitert til å studere kommunikasjonskvaliteten til de ansatte ved en ryggklinikk i Danmark. I utgangspunktet skulle vi kun se på forbedringspotensial for den enkelte. Men vi hadde ca. 80 videoer av leger, fysioterapeuter og kiropraktorer til rådighet. Og vi hadde tilleggsdata om pasientene, så vi kunne gjøre noen kvantitative analyser. Vi fant noe vi ikke hadde ventet. Dess lenger pasienten hadde hatt smerter, dess dårligere kommuniserte helsepersonellet med pasienten. De brukte kortere tid, de var mindre interessert i pasientens opplevelse av og forståelse av tilstanden, de viste mindre empati, og de var dårligere til å gi informasjon. Og det gjaldt alle 3 yrkesgrupper. Altså, når vi møter pasienter med kronisk smerte, så gjør det noe med oss. Og det gjør med oss, er ikke nødvendigvis gunstig for pasienten. I et annet av mine prosjekter fant jeg at dess lenger en lege hadde vært i sin praksis, dess mindre sannsynlig var det at han brukte tid på å hjelpe pasienten med psykososiale problemer. Det er tid for å returnere til kvinnen med fibromyalgi som oppsøkte meg. Hvor var jeg i 1992? Jeg hadde vært lege i 13 år, de fleste som allmennlege. Jeg hadde for lengst skjønt at det var mange pasienter jeg ikke hadde noen god hånd med. I 1990 til 1991 jobbet jeg 1,5 år som assistentlege på Modum Bads nervesanatorium for å få sykehustjeneste til spesialiteten i allmennmedisin og samfunnsmedisin. Det var det mest lærerike jeg har gjort. Og det jeg lærte mest om, var meg selv. Hvordan jeg virket på andre mennesker, hvordan jeg tonet ned ros jeg fikk, hvordan jeg ubevisst alltid lette etter løsninger eller forsøkte å bygge ned konflikter, nesten før de var oppstått. Gode egenskaper, vil mange si. Ikke alltid hensiktsmessige, sa de på Modum Bads nervesanatorium. Vær mer avventende, slipp folk mer til. Så når damen kom til mitt kontor et år senere, kunne jeg, langt mer kompetent enn tidligere, svare på hennes tillitserklæring. Det var hyggelig å høre. Jeg vil gjerne forsøke å hjelpe deg. Og så, etter å ha avventet hennes respons, la jeg til. Det er en ting jeg må si først, og det er at jeg bruker ikke diagnosen fibromyalgi. Hva sier du til det? Damen reagerte ikke så mye, bare så våken på meg. Så nikket hun og sa, jeg har prøvd alt, det får våge seg. Ok, sa jeg, da må vi først bli kjent. Fortell om deg selv. Det som hadde skjedd med meg, var at jeg var blitt gjort oppmerksom på min blinde flekk. Den blinde flekken i øyet vet vi jo ikke om. Vi ser ikke at vi ikke ser, fordi hjernen kompenserer. Jeg hadde alt tidligere sett at det var mye jeg ikke forstod, men nå hadde jeg sluttet å korrigere ved å plassere det jeg ikke forstod inn i en medisinsk naturvitenskapelig forklaringsmodell. Jeg hadde gjort det annerledes tidligere. Når det var noe jeg ikke forstod, så forstod jeg det likevel, som psykisk. Jeg plasserte de lange smertene og alle de andre ubegripelighetene i hodet på folk. Rett nok forholdsvis nennsomt, men budskapet i forslaget om henvisning til psykolog eller psykiater var likevel ikke til å misforstå. Det er ikke noe en pasient gjerne vil høre. At noe er galt med kroppen er ille nok. Sier du at noe er galt med hodet mitt, så sier du at noe er galt med meg. Det er skummelt. Nå derimot, i 1992, beveget jeg meg frimodig mot det sorte hull. Dette astronomiske fenomenet er skremmende å tenke på. Kommer vi for nær, passerer den såkalte hendelseshorisonten, en imaginær grense, så trekkes vi ubønnhørlig inn i hullet, og vi aner ikke mer hva som skjer, bare at vi ikke slipper ut igjen. Det er totalt tap av kontroll. Jeg måtte våge, hele tiden, å få satt min kunnskap og mine erkjennelser på prøve. Jeg måtte nærmere den enkelte for å begripe, og holde det ut om jeg ikke kunne begripe. Jeg måtte føle meg hjelpeløs og avmektig. Og det viste seg at det sorte hullet var enda mer truende for mange av pasientene. Det kunne ta tid å nærme seg, men det var trøst i å gjøre det sammen. Og jeg lærte sammen med dem. Jeg fikk innblikk i norske hverdagspasienters liv, som fikk Dostojevskijs romaner til å fremstå som kiosklitteratur. Det førte senere til min avhandling om hvor godt allmennleger kjenner pasientene sine. En temmelig enkel, men godt gjennomført spørreskjemastudie av 1401 pasienter i 89 legepraksiser, med svarprosent 87. Den viste at 1 av 3 pasienter i allmennpraksis, hver tredje, har belastninger i livet sitt som de opplever at har betydning for helsa. Som også viste at legene visste om rundt halvparten av disse belastningene hvis de var knyttet til arbeidslivet. Sjeldnere om det var mer private erfaringer, og bare i hvert 5. tilfelle om pasienten hadde offererfaring. Omtrent samtidig skrev allmennlegen Anna-Louise Kirkengen sitt banebrytende doktorarbeid, der hun bruker en fenomenologisk tilnærming for å begripe, senere popularisert i boken «Hvordan krenkede barn blir syke voksne». Der fremstilles flere overbevisende historier om hvordan konkrete overgrepserfaringer kan forklare helt eksplisitte lokale smerter. Boken bør være standardlitteratur for helsepersonell. La oss lytte et øyeblikk til lyrikeren Nils Ytri i boken «Bokserens blod». Jeg var ikke av familie. Jeg er fortsatt elev av de uheldige omstendigheter. Men jeg vokste opp. Som de fleste ble til med parkfugl. Ikke Bach, ikke opera. Jeg vokste opp, ble stor og svak for den gale vandrer. Jeg vokste opp, ingen walkover i livets første runde. Men gongongen reddet meg stadig fra å bli helt i min barndom av boksing og køllekamp. Litt senere i samme dikt sier han: I dine gater, barndom, gikk jeg i stykker, bit for bit, meter for meter, til det føltes som jeg dekket hele deg med meg. Hva våre medmennesker er frarøvet i løpet av sine liv, og hva det betyr for dem, kan vi ikke lese oss til. Vi må lytte. Men gjør vi det? Her er noen sitater fra den afghanske flyktningen Farida Ahmadis studie «Tause skrik» om smerte og multikulturalisme og minoritetskvinners behov for anerkjennelse. Sagt av en middelaldrende pakistanskfødt enke, giftet til Norge som 16-åring, nå med ansvar for svigerforeldre og barn og husstandens inntekt. Legen min gir meg smertestillende tabletter, de virker bare kortvarig. Norske leger er rare. Når jeg går til legen min, er han opptatt med sin datamaskin. Han ser ikke på meg, men stiller spørsmål om hvor jeg bor og skriver det på dataen. Jeg savner at legen snakker med meg, og at jeg får tid og blir hørt. Det er ikke tid til å forklare at jeg ikke kan gå på trening. Sagt av en somalisk flyktningkvinne: smerten ved arbeidsledighet er større enn smerten ved omskjæring. Sagt av en Oslo-lege om innvandrerkvinnene i sin praksis: de vil ikke bli bedre. Vi hører at legen ikke vil forbi hendelseshorisonten og inn i det sorte hullet. Det er forståelig, for hun vet jo ikke om hun har noe som helst å hjelpe seg med der. Dessuten, det kan godt være at hun har erfart at ingenting av det hun tilbyr, blir tatt imot. Forventningene til en lege er ikke de samme i Afrika og Asia. Ja, de varierer faktisk fra person til person, også blant norske. Spør vi folk om hva de håper vi kan gjøre? Vetlesen skriver om den langvarige smerten, at kroppen blir som et fengsel med sin fysisk rommelige utstrekning, som setter grenser for verdenen jeg kan oppleve. Det er ille nok, men han trekker effekten av smerten lenger. Sitat. Innsikten som trenger seg på, er at kroppen, kroppens utsatthet for smerte like gjerne kan hevdes å være noe som skiller mennesker ad, som det forener oss alle. Det er smerten som avgjør. Smerten bestemmer om jeg opplever meg og min eksistens i verden som grunnleggende lik og som del av andre menneskers eksistens i den, eller om jeg tvert om opplever min eksistens som radikalt frakoblet alle andres. Å være frakoblet andre mennesker er en eksistensiell trussel. Vi finnes bare i kraft av å høre til menneskeflokken. Hva skal vi ellers med speilnevroner? Det ikke å høre til er tett forbundet med avvisning, med skam. Å ha kronisk smerte er skammelig. Det er neppe det første du nevner på et jobbintervju. Det er ikke noen hyppig flagget egenskap på en datingnettside. Selv hos legen er det sjelden det første som presenteres, og hvis det gjøres, som i tilfelle med min middelaldrende kvinne, kommer det gjerne i en form vi leger forventes å kunne forholde oss til. Og har vi intet annet å tilby disse pasientene, så har vi i hvert fall noe som beskytter mot den endelige frakobling. En sykemelding, en tilkobling, en attest på at pasienten hører til et samfunn. På den må vi, som dere vet, skrive noe medisinsk, en unnskyldning nærmest, på vegne av pasienten, for at de ikke kan brødfø seg selv. Jeg sa jeg lærte av å nærme meg det sorte hullet sammen med pasienten, men noen ganger var det tøft. En sak er å få innsikt i fortvilte liv. Verre var det når jeg ikke ville gå på akkord med det jeg mente var den beste løsningen, nemlig å la være å skrive sykemelding, eller nekte forskrivning av B-preparat. Da kunne avgrunnen en sjelden gang komme ubehagelig nær. Trusler, giftig kritikk, og selvsagt det som vi aller minst vil høre, og bli karakterisert som ubrukelig. Jeg måtte øve på å tenke at pasienten nok hadde rett. Jeg var ubrukelig for han. Og jeg innrømmer at i slike nærapokalyptiske øyeblikk var det godt å ha etablert medisinsk praksis i ryggen. Det var også en trøst å tenke at jeg var heldig, som bare var ubrukelig der og da, at pasienten tross alt sto i den opplevelsen mer eller mindre hele tiden. Den middelaldrende kvinnen med fibromyalgi var ugift enebarn og bodde sammen med sin nesten 80 år gamle mor. Hun hadde vært flink på skolen og pliktoppfyllende. Faren deserterte familien da hun var i tenårene. Hun kunne ikke huske overgrep, bare at han sjelden var hjemme. Mora falt sammen da han dro, og knyttet datteren til seg med alle emosjonelle midler. Tilløp til forelskelser klarte mor raskt å torpedere. Kvinnen fikk gå på handelsskole i hjembyen. Det var ikke snakk om å reise vekk for å studere, til tross for gode skoleresultater. Hun fikk seg jobb i et forsikringsselskap, der hun hadde steget i gradene til kontorsjef på grunn av sin pålitelighet, slik hun selv fortalte det. Men hun var avhengig av paralginforte. Hun hadde fått det for hodepine første gang i slutten av tenårene, og brukt det med økende hyppighet gjennom 20-årene. Siden hun var 30 hadde hun fått det fast. Da hun kom til meg, sto hun på 2 tabletter 3 ganger daglig. Det var mange år siden legen hadde sagt hun hadde fibromyalgi. Hun hadde også vært hos reumatolog. Hundrevis av fysioterapitimer og bassengturer hadde aldri gitt annet enn kortvarig begrenset effekt. Jeg sa ikke at jeg forstod smertene hennes. Det gjorde jeg sikkert ikke heller. Jeg sa ikke at det var psykisk. Det ville vært å be henne forlate rommet. Jeg spurte hva hun håpet vi kunne oppnå. Det viste seg at hun følte at medikamentene sløvet henne, og at det gikk utover arbeidet. Hun skulle ønske at hun kunne bruke mindre. Det skal vi klare, sa jeg. Men det kan ta litt tid. Er det noe annet du ønsker annerledes i livet? Det tok litt tid før hun svarte. Jeg kunne så vidt ane litt fuktige øyne. Til slutt sa hun nesten uhørlig: Jeg skulle ønske at mor var død. Det kunne jeg ikke hjelpe henne med. Men det hjalp at jeg hadde hørt det. Hele den første samtalen tok en halv time. Over et halvt års tid fikk vi trappet ned Pelagin Forte til inntil 1 ganger 3, og hun tok oftest mindre. Hun hadde påbegynt oppgaven med å sette grenser for sin mor. Hun og flere kronikere med henne tok det tungt når jeg forlot dem og solgte min praksis for å begynne å forske. Melodien var: Hvor skal jeg nå finne en lege som er nysgjerrig på livet mitt? De finnes, sa jeg. Det er klart de finnes. Ikke gi deg. Så meldingen til dere, kjære tilhørere, er enkel. Når en med så dårlig utviklede speilnevroner som meg kan få det til, og sågar uten å ha tilegnet meg spesifikk kunnskap om smertebehandling, som jeg riktignok burde ha gjort, så kan alle få det til. Resepten er egentlig enkel. I stedet for å korrigere for den blinde flekken, gå mot det sorte hullet. Vær forberedt på avmakt og hold det ut. Tvil ikke på din betydning som ledsager. Utforsk pasientens forståelse av plagene, og vær forsiktig med å fremme din egen. Utforsk hva smerten betyr for livsutfoldelsen, og unngå en skala fra 1 til 10. Finn ut hva pasienten håper å oppnå. De er mer realistiske enn du tror. Ikke se på deg selv som den som skal fjerne smerten eller løse alle problemer. Vær modig. Sett grenser. Som Hannah Arendt skriver: Menneskets vilkår er slik at smerter og anstrengelser ikke bare er symptomer som kan fjernes uten å endre selve livet. Men det du uansett kan og må tilby, er tilkobling. Du må vise disse pasientene at de hører til oss, menneskeheten. I Ahmadis bok finner vi dette sitatet fra en tredje innvandrerkvinne. Til sist sa legen at han ikke kunne hjelpe meg mer. Jeg måtte bare finne ut hvordan jeg kan mestre mitt liv, sa han, og leve med smerten. Det høres ut som en frakobling. Legen har gitt opp og forstår ikke betydningen av ledsagerfunksjonen. Noen ganger kan det være nok bare å lytte og tillate at pasienten ønsker sin mor død. Det kurerer ikke, men det hjelper. Jeg tar frem det aller verste i meg, min aller dypeste skam. Og legen ser på meg, hører etter, nikker og forlater meg ikke. I siste instans er det å tilhøre noe man ikke kan leve uten. Sjeldent kortere formulert enn i Niels Fredrik Dahls kjærlighetsdikt, Den tredje muskel. Jeg sa: Jeg har 1 muskel, hjerte. Jeg har 2 muskler, leppene. Jeg har 3 muskler. Bli hos meg.
Tusen takk, Pål, for et fantastisk foredrag. Og nå skal vi gi deg en liten gave i stedet for en vinflaske som man ofte får på ved sånne anledninger. Så vi vil gi deg en gave som redder liv. Og det er en gave til Norsk Folkehjelp. Og den vil da støtte utdanningen av en sykepleier i Sør-Sudan.
Strålende. Tusen takk.
Da kommer litt praktisk informasjon fra seminarkomiteen. Det er fullbooket på Lorry i kveldens get together, men det er ikke fullbooket på banketten i morgen. Så hvis noen har lyst til å være med, så kan dere melde dere på før lunsj i dag, som er siste sjans. Det finnes påmeldinger til workshopsen som skal være i dag, og også workshopen til Adriaan Leuw, som er i morgen tidlig, fra 8 til 9. Og det finner dere ute der hvor dere registrerte dere. Når det gjelder spørsmål til forelesere, så har vi noen åpninger i programmet til dette, og for de som ikke ønsker å rekke opp hånda, så er det lov å gi en lapp til oss som sitter på første rad, så kan vi lese spørsmålet opp til plenum hvis det er ønskelig. Og hvis det er på engelsk eller på norsk, det spiller ingen rolle. Fint om dere melder dere på. Utstillerne våre, bestøk gjerne utstillerne. De holder til i lokalet ved siden av oss, alle sammen, og vil gjerne hilse på og gå dit. Nå skal jeg introdusere en av våre store gjester. I will now introduce Adriaan Leuw. He is one of our key speakers on this weekend. He's a very, very busy man. We've been so lucky to have him. I've tried so hard to get him over, and he gave in finally. He has his bachelor, his master's degree, and his PhD from South Africa, Cape Town. He is a faculty member of St. Ambrose University and also Nevada University in Las Vegas. He is teaching pain science, and he's done so for over 20 years. He's got numerous articles published, books, chapters, and I can go on forever. He is very, very special to us. He's a really nice man. Anytime I wonder anything, I drop him an email. Within 2 hours, considering the time difference, he has a reply in my inbox. He is amazing. He is such a good teacher. He still is. And he will now tell us about pain his way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Excellent. I deeply apologize. I do not understand Norwegian, and I don't know if I'm supposed to be standing on the chair like the First Lady, or I'm not sure what, so I'm going to walk around if that's okay. I do want to thank the organizing committee. I was here, I think, 4 years ago, and I figured they'd never have me back again, but here I am. So who was here last time? I recognize some faces. Who saw me last time? Nobody? Excellent. Sorry, whatever I taught you 4 years ago is nonsense. We have new research, so we're going to work our way through. So I do want to thank the organizing committee for having me here, and so we're going to talk about pain science being hands-on or hands-off. The funny thing is, yesterday afternoon I was on the bus from the airport to the hotel, and I was emailing forward and back with Joe Nice out of Belgium. And Joe is on the record for saying the best thing he ever did in pain science is when he started sitting on his hands and started only talking to patients, which I found ironic. So I figured I'm going to change my presentation this morning and say pain science is hands-off. Thanks for coming. Any questions? We cannot do that. So we're going to get started this morning and work our way through it. We now know that 1 in 5 people in the world have some form of chronic pain. It doesn't matter where you go. You can go in the United States, Australia, in Europe. By the way, some of the European data tells us it's about 1 in 3.5 people have chronic pain. Chronic pain, according to the World Health Organization, is a major epidemic. So I'm going to ask a quick question before we even get started. Who here likes to treat chronic pain? And there's always somebody in the back that puts up their hand, and we know they're lying to us. Nobody likes this. I will tell you that. I've been trained by the best people in the world. I'm very thankful for that. But this is the hardest thing you'll ever do, is to treat people with persistent pain. And so if we can understand how this works, this is adding a lot of our problems for us is chronic pain. The question people always ask us, why is pain getting worse, not better? We are spending more money than we've ever spent in this world. We've done more research. You've gone to more courses, and guess what? Pain's getting worse. Well, the answer is yes. We don't know what the answer is. There's multiple answers. The one that we have focused a lot on are the models. We're standing here in 2016 in Oslo, and we now know the pain gate is 51 years old this year. And Ron Melzack himself has told us the pain gate is obsolete in many ways. Currently in the United States, the predominant model we use for pain science is the pain gate, and yet it's 51 years old. Maybe you still follow René Descartes, 350 years old. The bottom line is the models, the way we look at pain is very wrong. And if we want to change pain, we got to change first how we look at pain. And that's kind of what we've been doing in all our research. The neat thing about understanding pain is we've now moved to a wider model called biopsychosocial. And by the way, it makes for a very fancy name when you introduce yourself. I'm a biopsychosocial manual therapist. Makes for a long name tag, by the way, name badge. And nobody really knows what it means. We got to be very careful here. So we want to talk about this concept of taking on biopsychosocial models. Without jumping to a lot of conclusions here, I need you to understand this morning. There are many people in this world that hurt really bad, but their tissues are fine. There's nothing wrong with their tissues. Their tissues have healed to the best of their ability. We now know discs heal with scar formation in about a year pretty well. We know tissues heal. Then how does it make sense when somebody comes to us and say, I still hurt? And you ask them, when did you hurt yourself? 1965. It just doesn't make a lot of sense for us in the manual therapy world. I was trained as a manual therapist, and it never made sense to me when tissues should have been better and people still hurt. The reality is people can have tissue problems or pain problems, and they're two separate events. This slide, for me, is fundamental. You need to understand that 30% of people in this world have pain, have never had an injury. We talk about emotional pain, emotional trauma. Life happens to them. And we now know this happens to some people. So the problem for us has always been with the models. We've always tried to put tissues and pain together. The René Descartes model says when you have an injury, you must hurt. And when you hurt, that means something must be wrong. And we have a beautiful saying for that in South Africa. It's called bullshit. It doesn't work that way. I need you to understand that this slide may be the most important one we have for the conference, because pain science and tissues are two separate events for us. And I know as a manual therapist, this is almost contrary to what we do, because I was trained to go find the tissue fault, Jeff Maitland, getting on the spine and poking around. Is that your pain? That's my pain. Let's fix your pain. And I can sing that song every day of my life. And hear me correct, I'm a big fan of Jeff. But the point is, we've always looked at tissues for the problem. So in the world of manual therapy, we slowly started figuring this out. I was very lucky. I spent 18 years of my life with David Butler, several years of Lorimer Moseley, before Louis Gifford passed away 2 years ago. Spent the last year of his life with him trying to figure out a lot of the pain stuff. And the cool thing that happened to us basically in the mid-1990s, when manual therapy was very predominant, very strong, when IFOM came around, we were big into tissues. And the problem for us is we very quickly figured out there's a big part we're missing. A personal note, Jeff Maitland told stories where he would attract more people coming in with chronic pain, chronic pain. Don't look at me that way this morning. You know how it works in a real clinic. When people cannot be helped, where do we go? We go to the guru. We go to the person who's been around. The young physical therapists, the young physios, the young manual therapists. What do you do when you cannot help somebody? You send it to the old physio, right? Go see him, go see her. Because they must know what they're doing. They're still here. Otherwise, they would have left our profession, right? No doubt about it. So what happened is the more complicated patients would show up in the more advanced clinics. And the reality is none of us were taught into this. In the mid-1990s, we were lucky enough that people like Louis Gifford, people like David Butler came along and said, we got to figure out how pain works. By the way, in the early days of manual therapy, some of our pioneers spent time with people like Dr. Patrick Wall, Melzack and Wall, to start figuring out how does pain work. And we're sitting here today in 2016 and pain's getting worse. And so we had this massive movement that came along. In the mid-1990s, Louis Gifford started this pain science model, driving people towards understanding more about how pain works, learning about pain, not just about how tissues work. And by the way, this drives us where I want to take you this morning with our presentation. Soon after, in 2006, Sackett came around and told us, everything we do in therapy doesn't work. Welcome to the world of evidence-based medicine. Can you remember the day when evidence-based medicine showed up? Suddenly it told me everything I do doesn't work. There's no double-blind studies done on blind people. There are no randomized controlled trials. There are no systematic reviews. And yet, in 2006, when Sackett came out with evidence-based practice, millions of people every day were still being helped by us. They would actually leave our clinics and say, I feel better, I move better, I function better. But suddenly we pushed our direction towards research, right? Research, randomized controlled trials we did very early on. So soon after this, in the world of pain science, remember we started figuring out we need to know more about pain. Louis Gifford told us we need to do this. Butler came along the same time. We started doing research. For about 5 years in my world, we had something we called the Lorimer-Moseley Festival. Every paper you want to, from 2002 to 2005, if you want to reference, just say Moseley. You're going to be 93% correct. Because he was the first guy that took this concept on that pain science needs science or research behind it. So we did this incredible amount of research. Where are we today in 2016? We now know this. Today, as I'm standing in front of you, there are 13 high-quality randomized controlled trials, 3 systematic reviews that tell us this. If you come to me in pain, and I sit with you and explain to you how pain works from a biological and physiological perspective, not the psychology, not the social aspect, but the biology of pain, and you get it. As Butler says, in the marrow of your bones, you go, I understand it. You move better. Your pain goes down. You function better. You do more exercise. The evidence right now, as I always tell my students, this isn't because I'm involved in the research, not because it's my research. It stands by itself. I can pass away today and it will work. The research is gaining and gaining. This works. Sitting with a patient, explaining pain to them, has shown it works, no doubt about it. So here I'm standing at a manual therapy conference in Oslo, and we're supposed to tell you how cool manual therapy is. But yet the slides are saying this, right? So I should get off this stage, get out of the room real fast so no manual therapist grab me and manipulate me to death, right? We don't want that. No, I just want to show you where we are. The problem that happened, and by the way, the research we've done, this systematic review was just accepted for publication. The evidence is growing and growing and growing. Teaching people how pain works is advantageous, no doubt about it. And by the way, I know there are some very high-quality manual therapists here today. But you understand you've made many, many people better in your life with the words you spoke, and had very little to do with the technique you just did. If you can take that on for 1 second, fantastic. Because I went through the manual therapy programs 20, 25 years ago, and guess what? I always believed it was the technique, the technique, the technique. And we now know it's so much else to determine pain for us, and not just the technique we're doing. By the way, I'm not giving you permission to not be good at your hands. But I want you to understand the words we speak are often very, very powerful. And that's what this research really shows. The problem that happened in my profession, like yours this morning, is it turned us into the world of psychology. Oh, I know where you want me to go, Adriaan. You want me to become a psychologist. Let's teach people. I know of physios in the world that have learned pain science and have sold their treatment tables. All they do with people now, they sit and explain pain to patients. Is that right? Is that the best way to do it? Well, that's why we're here today, right? That's why we're at the conference. Well, the concept that I want to take on this morning, and I'm going to try and spin to you this morning, is that pain science isn't hands-off. Obviously, the manual therapy conference, right? But let me show you why we believe this in the world of pain science. So right now, we know education works. But let's go a little bit further. If you want to understand how pain works, this is the current model that we're following. It's adapted by Moseley from Ron Melzack's work. We now know that pain is 100% produced by the brain. And it's based on perception of threat. So I want everybody to do me a favor real quick. Turn to the person next to you. Come on, turn to them. Hit him in the arm. Punch him. Hit him in the arm. Okay, settle down. It's okay. Calm down. Only once. All right. Now, how many of you guys actually have pain right now? Maybe 1 or 2, right? But none of you guys have pain. You just had a nociceptive event. If you were in my research lab right now, we could measure, punch you in the arm, a delta activation instantly, followed by slow activation of C fibers. You're getting information coming in. The interesting thing is it's only nociception. That gets passed on via the second-order neurons to the brain, typically the thalamus, that will then project it out. And your brain will analyze this and say, am I under threat? And you're sitting this morning in a conference with your friends and your colleagues, and the brain is analyzing, going, this isn't a threat. so I'm not going to produce pain. You just got nociception. The reality is your brain decides this, and the biggest word on this slide for me comes down to threat. Do you understand that what we do every day when we alter pain in human beings is we alter the threatening information the brain receives? Be it with your hands, with your words, the combination of it, etc., and all the other cool stuff we're doing. We change threat all the time. Now, again, in therapy, if you want to change threat, we have two options, and it is more than this. But the two that we've had a lot of focus is bottom up, right? Feed the brain different information, feed it information. Or we can go top down, make the brain so smart that the brain will down-regulate. So how do we do it? Well, manual therapy. So what do? We lay you down on your stomach. We mobilize your spine, put you on your back. We do soft tissue work. We feed the brain information at varying grades, at varying speeds, high velocity, low amplitude, whatever techniques, we alter it and feed the brain. Now the patient stands up and say, I feel better. What do we really do? Do we feed the brain different information? The area we have focused on the last few years is the is a top-down approach. Can we make the brain so smart that the brain will say, calm down, we're going to be okay? Now, obviously, the answer for us today is going to be both, right? Bottom up and top down at the same time. Well, the manual therapy world is very intrigued in this right now as well. We now know in any manual therapy conference you go to, I can prove to you today that if you do a thrust on somebody today, in the mid-thoracic spine, your periaqueductal gray area releases endorphins, enkephalin, serotonin that calms you down. We can activate it, we can measure it on fMRI very, very quickly. We now know that when you manipulate someone and they stand up and say, wow, I feel better, so much better, there is a central mechanism that calms the system down. We know this happens, it's been proven. By the way, we also know that for manual therapy, there's a neuromuscular component. If we manipulate, there is a neuromuscular effect. It's almost like a computer where you press Alt, Control, Delete, you reboot the system, and somebody moves better. Nicole Rainey showed us for people with low back pain, when you manipulate them, transverse abdominis fires, stronger, bigger contractions on diagnostic ultrasound. By the way, my buddy Louis Puntaduras showed it doesn't work on people that don't have pain. The reality is we now know motor control improves following manipulation. So there's a neuromuscular effect. There's a central effect. And I'm excited about this because this is where we should be looking, beyond the biomechanical model. I know you have speakers coming this weekend. I looked at the presentations, and that's going to talk about the biomechanical model. The biomechanical model needs major updating if we look at pain science nowadays. What I want to sell you this morning, however, is something different, even far more advanced. I need to take you this morning up between your ears. And you remember this picture. 1937, Penfield gave us this picture. This is the primary somatosensory cortex. This is the homunculus. By the way, what a great name, homunculus. Can you imagine you name your dog homunculus? Yo, homunculus, come here. What a great name. And only you would know the joke or the best part. By the way, Penfield told us in 1937 there sits a mini me here. A little you sits right here. That's not true, by the way. We now know there are sensory maps all over the brain. There are immune maps, motor maps, but this is the most documented one. By the way, if you look at this picture, can you see it looks like a human being? But it isn't, because look at it. It goes from your face to your hand, and later on you find the neck. So we have the face here, but there's the neck is up here. Isn't it interesting? It looks like a person. We call it humanoid. By the way, we now know that certain areas are larger. Certain areas are smaller. Use it or lose it has never been this alive. We can now scan a musician and tell you what musical instrument they play without even knowing. You play the flute, your lips get big. If you read Braille and you're blind, your index finger that reads Braille becomes huge. By the way, only during the week. On weekends, gets smaller because you read less Braille. Welcome to the world of neuroplasticity. If you take two fingers, you wiggle them forward and back, you'll find two fingers in the brain very quickly. We can scan it. If we put tape around your fingers, how long before there's only one finger? 15 minutes. Not that long ago, we said it's 2 days, it's 48 hours, it's 24 hours. That's not true. Use it or lose it has never been this alive. And for me as a manual therapist, when we figure this stuff out, how neat is this? How neat is it? Because we now know that this map in the brain strongly predicts pain. Is this a hand or a foot? Hand or a foot? You're a little slower than the Israelis a few weeks ago. Is this a hand or a foot? Left or right? Excellent work. Wow. Well, according to my quick experiment, none of you guys have complex regional pain syndrome this morning. Do you know that a normal person takes 2.4 seconds to figure out this is a hand and that it's right, not left? If I injected your wrist this morning with CRPS, RSD, reflex sympathetic dystrophy, complex regional pain, and I showed you the same hand this morning, you'll take 4.7 seconds to figure out left and right. And the longer you take to figure out left and right, the more pain you have. And if the only thing I did in therapy is teach you what left and right is, your pain plummets. What makes that happen? This guy. We now know in chronic pain, the brain alters the brain maps. How does it occur? It's an immune response. We now know that your immune response, pain, there's a massive immune response that alters the blood-brain barrier, opening it up. It smudges these maps where we cannot identify body parts. It gets incredibly complex. Let's do an experiment this morning real quick in Oslo. Everybody ready? Find the back of your right ear. Can you touch the back of your right ear? This is really cool. If you teach neuroscience to students, this is a great experiment. I need you to go from your ear to the top of your head. Go in line of your ear, straight to the top of your head. You got to go about an inch forward, stop, and 1 inch to the right, about right here, about 1 centimeter. This is called temporal summation, 20 seconds. Just tap there for me for a second. Just keep tapping. Tapping for about 20 seconds. You're stimulating through the cranium. Is anything happening? I need you guys to stop because you're right there. You're on the genitals right now. Stop. Stop. Some of you guys you're going to go home tonight, huh? And you thought you're not going to learn anything at this conference. That's the best thing you're going to ever learn. All right, we're done. You're going to try that tonight. I know you're going to do it. These maps are plastic, and we now know they alter very, very quickly. So we have studied this in certain conditions like complex regional pain, CRPS, in people with spinal cord injury, phantom limbs, dystonias, repetitive strain. What have we found out is that these maps alter, and they alter very, very quickly. And depending on the health of this map, the brain will decide what to do. Well, the interesting thing is, in the last few years, we've become aware that in people with low back pain that don't move much because they're afraid, go look at Johan Flay and Steve Linton's research on fear avoidance. Where they don't move much, we know the maps alter, and we're almost getting a neglect, like in strokes. That's not my arm. This is not my back. And the minute this happens, there's a significant change. Lorimer Moseley, Hannu Lumijoki have shown us in people with chronic low back pain, there is a change, not only in the map in the brain, but also how they move. What you see here are 6 patients in a case series. What they had patients do with chronic low back pain is basically on a big chart draw where they feel their back. And in 5 of the 6 cases, you will see there is a gap. They cannot find it. Why? Because they don't know where it is. What you see on the crossbars here is 2-point discrimination. For people coming to the lab this afternoon, tomorrow morning, we're going to be doing all this really neat stuff because guess what? The functional MRI, the fMRI of the clinician today is 2-point discrimination. We were taught this way back in school, 2-point discrimination in the neuro part of our training. And I will tell you right now, this is going to become the hottest thing in manual therapy, is 2-point discrimination, because it tells you instantly in the clinic without a scan, how healthy is that map? Because if the map isn't healthy, we got to do something to restore the map so the brain understands what's going on and recognizes body parts. We now have seen, Hannu Lumijoki have shown us that people in chronic pain don't know where their pelvis is. And you've done this. Have you ever asked a patient, do an anterior pelvic tilt? And they stand there and they don't know where it is because they've lost their body part. And these are clinical manifestations of, I don't know where the body part is. The other part I would encourage you guys to remember for me this morning as well is body charts. There is also increasing evidence that body charts is making a huge comeback in the world of manual therapy. I remember way back, you give patient a body chart, fill in where you hurt, I'll be with you in a few minutes, and then you start coloring the whole body chart. You've seen these, right? Then they run out of ink, you need another pen, and we gotta keep going. And we always made fun of them. We always said, this patient, this isn't good, right? Guess what, guys? We have now found out when people color in the whole body chart, it's very likely they don't know where the pain is. They don't likely know where the body part even is. I encourage our students now, our residents are going through a program where we're having people color in where they hurt, and can we find that body part? I would encourage you this morning for the clinicians again, if you give somebody a body chart and they color in the whole area, apart from thinking, wait, what's going on, you should seriously consider, does this patient even know where their back is, where their neck is, where their arm is? Because if the brain doesn't know where the body part is, then the scary thing starts. We call it central sensitization. When the brain cannot identify self from non-self, it starts an immune response. If you step in a nail today or a splinter, your brain cannot identify that thing, and it starts an immune response to fight the invader called the splinter. We now know when the brain cannot find or recognize, is this my arm? It'll start an immune response. And what does that do? Two things. Number one, it messes up the map. Number two is it takes your nervous system and ramps it up, which we now call central and peripheral sensitization. Everybody okay with this? When your brain cannot find its own body parts, it ramps up the central nervous system to protect that body part, at least where it thinks the body part should be. In phantom limb pain, we cut your arm off. There is no more arm, but the map is in the brain. The map is there, but the map doesn't get exercised. The brain doesn't identify it, doesn't know what's going on, and produce pain where the body part should be. And you come in and say, my arm hurts, which we now know happened in phantom limb. So just as we get this session going, I know we're talking manual therapy, low back pain at the conference. I want to share with you 3 very simple studies. For the academics in the room, don't even ask me about it. They're simple, they're basic. This is what you do for students if they need projects. But I wanted to put these 3 in here this morning because they're clinically important. For the clinicians today, this is how we go about changing maps. So we started a few years ago, and we have huge studies going on right now, but these are really cool clinical ones. We asked the question that if we can enhance the map of the brain with techniques we know that can do it, like sensory discrimination, will this have a therapeutic effect? Again, I'm a manual therapist. I'm proud of it. I love manual therapy. But in the old days, we'd put you on the table and we'd work you over. I sweat, you sweat. I cry, you cry. I bleed, you bleed. And then half an hour later, how was that? Good, right? And I have nothing wrong with that. But there's something more I want to share with you this morning. So the first one is a case study we published a few years ago. And I find this intriguing. This was part of another study we did. And I'll talk about surgery stuff right after lunch as well. I don't know if it's the same in Norway, but in America, when somebody has back surgery, they go get the surgery, they come out of the operation, the surgeon puts a big sticker on the back that says, do not touch, especially the manual therapist, do not touch the back, for about 3 weeks. And so what we are thinking in the world of neuroscience is this 3-week period where somebody had back surgery, where they're not moving, not doing much, does the map change? And if we change the map, or things associated with the map, can we improve pain? So a little more complicated, but all we did is we had a lady, she underwent back surgery. L4551, she had a discectomy laminectomy for low back pain and leg pain. We saw her before surgery, we measured her laterality, figuring out left and right. We measured her sensitization, everything. We then saw her post-op and got permission to treat her in outpatient physical therapy, physio. And the only thing we did with her when she came to physio, we took her back, and with a pen, the back of a pen, we touched her back. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And for 5 minutes, we didn't physio. The only thing we did is, where am I touching you? And she had to discriminate. Was it 1, was it 2, was it 3, was it 5? That's all she had to do. That's all therapy we did for her, about 5 times. And by the way, remember, this is common times. We don't do much. It's walking stuff, but not anything else in therapy. All I want to show you real quick, this is flexion and straight leg raise. What you will see on the chart is before, when she comes into therapy, and when she leaves therapy, before, after. So she's her own control, if you want to talk about it that way. This is flexion, and you'll see in almost all cases except one, her flexion would improve. And of the 6 visits, she came to therapy twice a week, this exceeded minimal detectable change. Straight leg raise, 5 out of 6. So all she did, back surgery patient, typically no treatment, don't touch her. Where am I touching you? Where am I touching you? The brain had to be actively involved in this. You'll see her straight leg raise, pre-post, pre-post, pre-post. What's intriguing is her pressure pain thresholds. Pressure pain algometry, all we do is a pressure gauge. We press on the patient's dominant hand in the web space, in the thoracic spine, in the low back, and then the affected leg. And again, you can see pre-post, pre-post. The critical thing about this slide, very busy, is that the sensitization of her nervous system decreased in the low back and in her leg, not the other areas. They shouldn't. It affected the nervous system. For those interested, again, pressure pain algometry, the pressure goes up. We just inverted the scale to show you the nerves are calming down. Simple experiment, but for me, this is very intriguing, especially for surgery nowadays, where they say, don't touch these patients. So this made us start thinking, could we do more than this? We then took a group of people with chronic low back pain that came to physical therapy, and we did the same thing with them. Where am I touching you? Now, why is this important? Because we have found out that when you do tactile stimulus to the spine, to the body parts, the brain has to be part of the equation. It cannot be passive. You cannot just lay there and go, just touching it. Is it this? Is it that? The brain has to think. The brain has to be part of the process. So the same experiment we did on people with chronic low back pain. 16 patients. This is just a case series. And again, you'll see here in these patients, there was 5, actually there's 4 of these patients that met or exceeded the minimal detectable change for pain. The MDC for pain is 2.1. But look at the numbers there. I understand the numbers, I understand the statistics. But isn't this amazing? These are people with chronic low back pain. And the only thing we did was, where am I touching you? Where am I touching you? And their pain rating on a 10-point scale went down almost 2 points. Is there a subgroup of patients out there that are so sensitive, we call them too hot to handle? We can barely touch them. Where an approach like this may actually desensitize the nervous system enough to be able to put our hands on them to mobilize and manipulate. Because I don't know about you, but I see a lot of chronic pain patients, and many patients, I can barely touch them. Why are you pushing that hard? And I'm barely touching the skin. And this is opening up some avenues potentially for us. By the way, flexion, forward flexion improved 4.8 centimeters. Minimal detectable change is 4.5. This is amazing. I want you to stop for 1 second. All we did for low back pain patients, chronic low back pain, where am I touching you? Their flexion improved, about half of them, more than minimal detectable change, and their pain went down. This then led us to the last one as I'm finishing this session here. As a manual therapist, my thought always has been, and I was trained in South Africa. I was very lucky because Jeff Maitland would come from Adelaide, Australia to South Africa and train us. I remember the mantras as you get on the spine, as people poked up and down, up and down. My question was, this stuff we do in manual therapy, as you do your central PAs, your unilaterals, whatever technique you do, could it be that one of the effects you're having is remapping the brain? Could this thing we're doing by working, touching another human being, be way beyond hypo and hypermobility, which we now know has very poor reliability, figuring out if people have that anyway. So we actually started an experiment. And I want to show you a little video, if you don't mind. I hope the sound is okay. But this is actually Jeff Maitland. I don't know how many of you guys have seen Maitland actually practice. This was given to me by Mark Jones a few years ago. And I'll walk you through this is a neck examination. And I just want you to watch for a second, and then I'll talk about it. is having him compare. Does this one feel worse than this one? There. Should I go higher or lower? Nearly the exact same pain as what he gets. Pressing harder. Is it just local pain or referred? Compared to the other side. That just feels like his thumbs. What about that? A little bit sore, not as bad. Does it feel like it's superficial or deep? And you guys can watch the video. The point is simple. This is a beautiful description, especially if you listen to the audio. Because as Maitland has his thumbs on the neck, he's asking, is this the one, or should I go up or down? In my world of neuroscience, we call that sensory discrimination. Should I go up or should I go down? Left versus right. Should I say superficial or deep? I'm looking at your faces right now, and I'm getting that beautiful blank stare from manual therapists I get all over the world. I need you to understand that the stuff for years we thought we're doing, getting something unstuck and mobile and hyper and hypo, whatever, it is very likely that what we're really doing is we're feeding the brain information. And by having the patient involved in this may actually be far more advantageous than just passively laying there. And when you look at this little video of Maitland, it could be argued very strongly that what he does here, which we call just a nice examination, could be a form of sensory discrimination. So we tested this, and my students, we just submitted this for publication at the Journal of Manual Manipulative Therapy. So what do we do? And this is a very silly experiment, but it gives you an idea. And by the way, we have several other experiments going on as well. We took people with chronic low back pain. It ended up being 60 patients, and we put them into two groups. One group with low back pain came to therapy, and we grabbed the spine, and we showed them the spine. And this was the model we taught them. When life is good, there are 5 vertebrae bones in your back when you bend and twist and move, and they all share the load. Your mechanics is all good, right? But when we develop pain, muscle guarding, soreness, stiffness, all the things, the way we change how we move, some levels move more, some levels move less. That's our biomechanical model. I'm going to lay you down today, and I'm going to work on your back. We did some central PAs, and the idea is to make all the mechanical stuff move pretty good. That's a very standard way we would describe it. We took the other half of people, and we showed them the brain map. And we told them, your back sits right here in your head. When life is good and we move a lot, we can find the brain, and the back is right there. When we don't move much, the map becomes a little blurred. That's normal, happens in every person. We're going to do a technique on you today and lay you down and do techniques on your back to sharpen the map. So can you guys see exact same techniques, but we explained it different to the patients. So what happened? The interesting thing, if you look at the results, we had 62 patients, 35 females, 60 years old, 9.5 years of low back pain, oswestry, not that, it's up there. Fear avoidance of physical activity, work, and by the way, most of them have received manual therapy. The intriguing thing is, for low back pain, for leg pain, for flexion, all of those stayed about the same. But those that received a neuroscience explanation of how pain works, and that this is more of a plasticity retraining, had a significant difference in favor of them improving straight leg raise. By the way, the patients that received the neuroplasticity explanation had almost 7 times higher chance of meeting the minimal detectable change in straight leg raise. Now again, for the scientists in the room, you can ask me all you want to. We have lots more research, but I find this intriguing. Could it be that this thing we're doing with our hands does far more than just joint stuff, tissue stuff, but it actually remaps the brain? Obviously, the answer today is we should map people all the time. I don't know about you, but a scan cost me $5,000 That's why PTs, physical therapists, manual therapists, when you do scan research, it's a case study, or 2 or 3, because they're very, very expensive. So my point this morning as I finish off this lecture is, I look at pain science as completely hands-on. We've gone too far in saying this is hands-off, just teach people about pain, explain pain. I truly believe the combination between explaining to people how pain works, but then putting your hands on them is vitally important. The problem is just, these two approaches are not mutually exclusive. They actually work together really well. And this is really where I think a lot of people are missing it. You don't believe me? Look at this. The new systematic review we have coming out that was just accepted. What you see here are 13 randomized controlled trials where people receive pain education, explain pain. What do we have? In the people that receive explain pain plus some form of movement, be it manual therapy, aquatic therapy, or exercise, versus people that only got education. In all but one study that combined movement plus education, had a statistical significant difference in their pain compared to the other group. What's the end result of this slide? We're a hands-on profession. And by taking hands-on away from people, we're probably not helping people a lot. We're becoming psychologists. And sorry for the psychologists this morning. You want me to summarize psychology? I'll do it for you this morning. Are you ready? It's your mother. That's it. That's psychology 101, done. I'm a manual physical therapist, and I truly believe the combination in education and manual therapy, that combination is incredibly important. We know it works. The research has shown us it has to be pain neuroscience education plus something else, and all of it comes down to movement-based strategies. So as we finish off the last slide from Louis Gifford, we have to do top-down before bottom-up. What does that mean? We cannot just jump in a room and starting manual therapy. We've got to explain things, frame it correctly, so the patient understands what you're going to be doing, setting goals, etc. But the other part is also top-down while bottom-up. As you're working on the patient, the brain has to be actively involved. The lab sessions I'm doing this afternoon, tomorrow morning, you're going to see a lot of it is as we do manual techniques. Instead of have the patient just lay down and say, fix me, the patient has to be part of the solution. This guy has to be involved. Sensory discrimination. So I strongly believe, as we start this conference, pain science is hands-on, not hands-off. And I know there are some people who will argue with me, but the evidence by itself stands and says we have to do both of those. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much, Adriaan. Couldn't be a better start to the conference. Great news for everyone. Te, kaffe, nå det pause. Besøk utstillerne. Velkommen tilbake etter pausen. Precis.